Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
Home theater people, today you'll know how to get your networked videos on your video game system. You should watch the drop cam, because Aya's dances during the thing. Watch the drop cam. Oh, we're actually showing this now? This is actually what I do pretty much every single episode. Just nobody ever sees it. Welcome to Know-How. This is Twit's fun project show. I'm Ayaz Akhtar, and I show you a project every week that you could do at home, because if I can do it, you can do it. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to repurpose our video game systems. Now, we've done a whole bunch of episodes when it comes to home theater setups, like having a media server. We showed you how to set up one of those. We showed you how to rip your DVDs and put them on a server. And we showed you how to even make an Xbox Media Center out of a, or sorry, XBMC, because they changed the name, out of a Raspberry Pi. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to use a PS3 or an Xbox or pretty much any DLNA-enabled device to access our network videos and music and everything else very easily. We're going to use something called PS3 Media Server. It's going to be something called, it's going to be using UPnP. I'm going to show you how this thing actually works out. So let me go to this board here, which has been delightfully drawn on by Greg, apparently, so I need to erase this. That's me. See? Okay. Let me get rid of this. So here's how this is going to work. First, you find a piece of chalk. All right, so we're going to have, here's our media server. You got my bad handwriting. We got that there? All right, so we're going to have, let's see, we're going to need a PS3 or a game system. And then we're going to have our big TV over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually put a computer between these things here. Or actually, the server itself can be the PC, so we don't even need that. The server is going to send the stuff to the game system, and we're going to be able to watch all of our videos. So remember, to find out how to get your videos onto your server, go watch old episodes of Know-How, because that'll explain everything. It's very, very dusty. All right. So this media server uses something called UPnP. And when I was thinking about UPnP, my inner Steve Gibson started like going in the back of my head saying, Ayaz, that might not be secure. That's not secure. So what I did was I contacted my external Steve Gibson. If you don't know who he is, he's a security expert at GRC. He's also on Security Now every week with Leo Laporte. And I asked him, since he is a supreme know-it-all, what we should do. So I asked Steve, is it dangerous to use UPnP if you're only using it for your home network? And this is what he had to say.
Okay, so the short answer to is UPnP dangerous when only used sort of like internally for your own internal network, the answer is no. The danger for universal plug and play, basically, let's back up a little bit. What universal plug and play allows is auto configuration of networking stuff. So for example, if you had a firewall, universal plug and play could request that an opening be made in the firewall to allow data through. So inside your home network, that's cool, because it means that your devices on the network are able to discover each other and then to arrange a connection through whatever security that they might have. The only danger that universal plug and play has is in your router, which, because it's connected to the public internet, if its universal plug and play is turned on, there is malware that's around on the internet, and it's successful, so it's staying around, which is in the same way that your devices are able to use universal plug and play to configure each other, malware can use universal plug and play to configure your router behind your back and without you knowing it. And what malware does is it essentially breaks the natural firewall that a router is in order to allow potentially malicious traffic to go from the public internet into your own private network. So sort of standard security advice is, unless you absolutely have to have it turned on, turn off universal plug and play in your router router. The only places where you really tend to need it is if you're doing internet gaming, because, for example, the Xbox wants to use UPnP to allow incoming traffic to reach it. And the easy way is to have universal plug and play turned on in the router. The danger is that anything in your network is able to use it, because unfortunately, universal plug and play has no security built in at all. It was like never thought of that way. So the better solution, if you're a gamer, is to disable universal plug and play on the router and then manually add what's called the port mappings to allow the internet traffic to come in and go to your Xbox. And there's lots of information on the net about how to do that.
Yeah, so that had me a little curious as to what tools are there out there online that I could use to find out if my router is secure, and Steve had an answer for that too.
Well, you know, I've got the at Shields Up is the facility at grc.com, and because there was about 6 months ago, I guess, there was a serious concern about universal plug and play exposure on the internet. I added a very quick and easy, like almost just a couple clicks, quick test that anyone can use to see if universal plug and play, that is your router's universal plug and play, is exposed to the public internet. Some ISPs are now blocking that port to protect their own customers from this, because it's a real problem. And sometimes a router won't expose the fact that it's open, but in many cases it does. And so the little universal plug and play test at grc.com will show you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for actually setting up a little time for that little interview. We did this earlier today. If you're watching the video and you're like, hey, does that look really grainy? Yeah, it does. We had to work with what I had, and that's what I had for the system right there. But Steve's information, always fantastic. And we'll have everything he mentioned at twit.tv/KH, because this started off as an email thread because I was concerned about security aspects because, like Steve mentioned, universal plug and play, it's meant to have a nice open system. You want your devices to see each other, but that does lead to certain issues. So what we're going to do, though, since it's okay to do it within our own home network, that's what we're going to do, we are going to get our videos from our media server. In this case, we'll use my MacBook here, and we're going to get it to this PlayStation 3 wirelessly or with your wired network. I always suggest a wired network because if you're going to be sending big files around, you want to have that. And so the first piece of software I'm going to show is something called PS3 Media Server. I made a brief mention of this piece of software a long time ago. This is like way back, I think, in episode 31, about that XBMC Raspberry Pi device. And what PS3 Media Server is a Java-based UPnP media server, which also means it runs on pretty much anything. So if you got a Windows machine, a Linux machine, or a Mac, this software will look pretty much exactly the same as you're used to, as you're seeing right here. And it's got a lot of powerful things. What it lets you do, it lets you take your files and then have them streamed automatically to the PS3. Right now you can see it is sensing my PS3 on the same network. You do have to be on the same network. But there's a couple of things you should do when you're setting this up, because by default, there's certain things that are turned off for no reason. Oh, and by the way, PS3 Media Server is available for free. It's a free cross-platform piece of software, so it's not like you have to put out any money for this. So what you're going to do first up, though, highly suggest going to General Configuration. By default, for some reason, there is no automatic network interface card selected. This is my selection here. I chose EN0, and you can see my actual IP address, my internal IP address. Definitely select that. So that's under General Configuration and Force Networking on Interface, EN0, or wherever you have an IP address. Otherwise, you won't have any video going anywhere because, well, you don't have any connections, so that's not going to work. So you go into that, Navigation and Share Settings. This is where you actually tell the PS3 Media Server what to share. On the bottom here, we'll see Shared Folders. You just click the plus. You choose what you want to share. In my case, I'm going to choose Movies. And there's Movies, Music, and I actually had Movies twice. I'm going to get rid of that. So select all the folders where your content is. And you'll see there's a ton of little options everywhere. You're seeing like a big mess here, high transcode folder. This will make more sense once we get to the PS3. Transcoding settings. This is another weird thing. So in one of the episodes, we showed you how to rip a Blu-ray disc to make it an MKV. Now, MKVs, gigantic files of your Blu-ray rips, usually have the subtitles baked in or they're turned on by default. Now, if you don't want to see the subtitles right away, what you have to do with the PlayStation, the PS3 media server, you have to go into transcoding settings and then choose, get this, you have to actively choose definitely disable subtitles. Otherwise, you'll have subtitles always on there. It's kind of frustrating. I like to get rid of that. And you also see a ton of things you can change here. How much you want your buffer to be, transcode things. You can mess with this on your own time. You can go to audio settings. You can choose if you want to get 5.1 audio out of there. If your network's maybe congested or your TV just doesn't have a 5.1 system, you can have it set to 2.0 for stereo if you want. Lots of different options right there. So we've got that all set. Now we're going to go to status. Now I'm going to restart my server. Let's see what happens here. As long as my PC or Mac or Linux machine is on the same network as my PlayStation 3, and my PlayStation 3 is on, and let me get this, let's get this out of the way. It doesn't just work on the PS3. Because this is DLNA, it'll work on a Xbox 360. It worked with my AVR this morning. It also worked with my Samsung All-Share TV. So there's tons of devices, it turns out in my home theater, that could actually get this video. So what we're going to do is go to our PS3 on this TV, HDMI 2. And let's see where it is. Okay, so let's back out of this. So we're in our PlayStation interface here. We see that when you go to that crossbar here, we're going to go into video. We're going to go search for media servers. Actually, it's showing up right now, but we're going to do that again just to show you how that goes. So if you don't have your media server showing up right away, do a quick search. You'll wait for the scan, and you'll look at this very pretty little clock spinning. It's very pretty. La Roma in the chat room is making a good point about the MKV subtitles. You're right, they're not baked into the actual video. They are in a separate file, but the thing is, they'll automatically be turned on. That's kind of an issue. Thank you for correcting me in the chat room. If you're watching live, or you don't watch live, we have a chat room that I sometimes pay attention to because usually I'm running around. I don't get to see it that often. But now we can go back to the TV and we can see that one media server was found. See that? One, yay. In this case, it's the PS3 media server, and mine is called Harvey. My machine, little silly story, my machine fell on the ground. It got dented, so I named it Harvey Dent. So it's Harvey Dent. Half of it's busted in the face. It's true. That's why it's called Harvey. So what you do is you hit X, and you can see the folders you shared, movies and music. So I'll go into movies, and I want to show some big, fat demos, all right? So I'm going to show an MKV I ripped. You can see it says Marvel's The Avengers. This file is about 28 gigabytes. All right, so it's a big, massive honking file. Let's see how it goes. Sometimes you might see stuttering, you might not. We're about to find out what it does now. So you can see it's actually playing back that Marvel screen you've seen in the beginning of all of these movies. And there is a fast forward option, which I have found to be a little unreliable. You can see right now, you see, I don't remember this gray scene in The Avengers, but I'm pretty sure what's going on here is we're going as fast as we can. I'm going to hit X to hit play, and it's going to catch up. So now we've got our little blue thing here. As you remember, the whole Tesseract. If you haven't seen The Avengers, I'm spoiling this awfully for you. But yeah, so this is The Avengers running. It's running very smoothly, and I found in my home theater system, it's pumping out 5.1 audio. So I have the great surround sound going on. It works really well so far. It also supports lots of different formats. So if we have like an MP4 here, a Bob's Burgers, one of my favorite shows, you'll see it playing right now. It runs really smoothly. If you run into any issues, you can always look in the transcode folder. And what this will do is it'll actually go to the computer itself. The computer is going to try to transcode the files and then send it over to the PS3. So Bob's Burgers, M-encoder video. Now if you go back to my laptop, you'll see the transcoding settings. M-encoder video is right here under transcoder settings. You can change this. Use CPU multiple cores, AV sync alternate method, use a video scaler. Lots of things you can do to mess with this. By default, I don't mess with any of this because it works just fine. But I'm going to select this M-encoder video. Now, if you go to my screen on my laptop, you're going to see something you probably didn't see with the other cases. You will see a transcoding buffer status. This is letting you know that your computer is doing a lot of the work. So if you have a machine that you're like, hey, I really want to make sure I can surf the web and I want to do a bunch of film editing or whatever else, you don't want to do it on this machine. This machine is being tied up right now. You can see the bit rate is 10 megabits per second. Video is running in the back just fine. So that's the transcoding settings when we turn this off. Once I turn that off, you'll see it goes back to empty. Pretty simple kind of thing. Like I said, this is the PS3 media server, and they have a bunch of older models. What I found with the latest version of the PS3 media server, I believe it's 1.9, for some reason, sometimes it's like, you don't have a PlayStation 3, which I know is a lie because I'm pretty sure this is a PlayStation 3. So there's lots of alternatives. I ended up doing some extra research about this, and there are a couple of other alternatives out there if you don't want to use PS3 media server. Let's start off with this one called Universal Media Server. Gonna fire that up. This is also based on the PS3 media server, so it's gonna look very familiar, and it also is free, cross-platform, available for all. If for some reason PlayStation 3 media server you have that application and it doesn't find your PS3 or your Xbox 360, try out Universal Media Server. It might find it. The reason why, danged if I know. The thing is, I always suggest this. At my house, I think I'm running PlayStation 3 Media Server version 1.5, one of my old PCs, because it works. I don't see a need to ever upgrade any of these things. Same kind of configuration. You got general configurations. You've actually got plugins available for Universal Media Server. Don't really have that available for PS3. So you could have like G Music added in, Groove Shark. Navigation and share, very familiar, looks exactly the same. Add the files, it'll show up over here. Let's see, I'm talking a lot of smack, right? Is it actually up on my TV back here? Universal Media Server, Harvey. It just shows up automatically. So if for some reason it doesn't pop up, again, go back to refresh to search for media servers. There's that. Let's see if there's any difference when it comes to performance. We'll go back to the Avengers, that massively large file. We'll go back to the Avengers, that massively large file. Look at that. Now see, this is interesting, right? That thing is based on the PS3 media server, yet it's not showing us the video. That's kind of annoying. Again, these applications are free. Some of this stuff might work really well for you. For me, I've had PS3 media server be really awesome. The weird thing is I know if I go into the transcode folder and I go into Marvel's Avengers and then pick this, it might work, it may not work. Let's see how it goes. That's annoying, isn't it? So go with the PS3 media server if that happens. On my machine the other day, this worked 30% of the time. You see today it's working absolutely not any of the time there. Let's see, we've got lots of different files here. We could do the audio if we wanted to. That's an option if you want to have, well, apparently not in this case. You probably don't want to use that in this case. But in your house, it might be different. Because I was looking at forums when people were having PS3 media server issues. They went to Universal Media Server, and it found it OK. Lastly, there's something called Servio. Now, Servio is not free. Something called Servio Pro. It costs a couple bucks per, I think it's like a couple bucks per month. And what it'll let you do is a similar kind of thing. It's got lots of plugins as well, and it has mobile apps. So if you wanted to access your stuff on the web, you'd be able to access that. I've had very limited success with Servio. As you saw with that last one, didn't work so great. That's why I'm constantly saying PS3 Media Server is the way to go, because it's just free, it works. And if it doesn't work, get an older version. It's almost going to guarantee to work. I know that sounds like a little sketchy, but if you got a PS3 sitting around, or an Xbox 360, or you're just thinking, hey, look, the new systems are coming out. Well, what are you going to do with your old ones? Yeah, sure, you can play, I know, video games, right? You guys will play video games. I will watch lots and lots of movies with my devices, because that's kind of what I live for doing. Like, just kind of sitting there and watching there. So that's pretty much the way to do this. So what you have to do, though, remember, set up your media server, right? There'll be an explanation at twit.tv/KH. I think that's like episode 1. That's how to do a cloud thing. Then you have a game system. You're going to have to buy that on your own. You can't get that from twit.tv/KH. That'll send everything to your TV over your network. Because this transcodes all the files, you don't necessarily have to worry about DivX, XFID, AVIs, MKVs. PS3 Media Server seems to be doing a good job with that. Universal Media Server, as we saw today, not so good apparently. But I've read people in the forums, they said it's really great. They might have the ability to do something I can't right now. So that pretty much does it for this episode. If you want to know about, if you want to have links to any of the stuff we talked about, go to twit.tv/KH. There's going to be a bunch of show notes. Like last week, we did switching from iOS to Android. Lots of different show notes because you need lots of different applications to do this. So that's all right there. Shannon Morse was on with us to actually be the person to switch. She actually did successfully switch to her Nexus 4, and it's awesome now, thanks to the show and these notes. If you've got questions, comments, or like maybe Universal Media Server works great for you, or you're like, hey, there's another thing I like to use, like Tversity or something like that. If you love a program or you have a show idea, go to our Google Plus community. I think there's over 4,000 of you guys now. gplus.to/TwitKH. It's a great active community, lots of people with brilliant ideas for different show ideas. And they're helping out each other with bunches of questions and answers. It kind of reminds me of old school forums, but it's a lot prettier. But I definitely like what's going on there. We sometimes put some insider videos. I know for this, I think a couple weeks ago, I came home and my TV was kind of falling off its mount on the wall. That wasn't cool, but it was recorded, and the fix was recorded, and it was actually on the Google Plus community. So if you want to see some insider videos, that's a pretty good place for that. If you want to communicate with us, not on Google Plus, try out Twitter. We always look for the hashtag TwitKH. We're always looking for people's ideas there. I'm seeing lots of great show ideas. I think some guy the other day, maybe yesterday, was like, I thought you were going to show us how to organize our lives paperlessly. I need that thing urgently soon, because apparently he's going through some issues. I will try to help that eventually, how to figure out some paperless kind of universe. And there's also something called email, which we still do, which I look at, knowhow@twit.tv. Send us an email, questions, concerns, show ideas, whatever you got. Corrections, big fan of that, by the way, because if stuff works for you and doesn't work for me, I'd love to know how to fix stuff, because I'm always learning this stuff as well. I think that's pretty much it. So now that we know how to get our media to our PS3 or any DLNA-capable device, go do it. And thanks to Steve Gibson for helping us out, by the way. That was great.